Hello, Facebook. I'm trying desperately today not to come to you in the middle of the night from a parking lot or from a darkened space somewhere. So I'm actually coming to you mid-hearing. You may hear there's a Judiciary and Labor Committee meeting going on as we speak. That should go on a fair amount of time. Just to review what that hearing has to do with is, you may recall the governor vetoed a piece of legislation that had to do with the when restaurant workers get paid tipped wages versus minimum wage. And essentially it has to do with, it's a little bit more complicated than this, but essentially what we're trying to resolve is the Department of Labor, as I've said before, if you work in a restaurant and you're a tipped worker, when you are waiting tables, you receive, your minimum wage is lower. It's about $6.38 an hour, and then you receive tips. And if you're doing things that aren't tipped work of various kinds, you are entitled to receive minimum wage. And so restaurants are generally supposed to keep track of when you're doing which kind of work. The Department of Labor had been earlier giving out advice to restaurants saying, well, if that non-tipped work is de minimis, then you don't have to, we're not going to pursue you. At the same time, the statute made it quite clear that when workers were not doing tipped work, they were entitled to minimum wage, so that if they pursued a legal action, they had a potential claim. And so there are rules about that, how you qualify for class action litigation, because many of these claims are small claims, and so it would be more costly to hire a lawyer than the damages that you might be entitled to. So class action is important here. Also the ability to recover attorney's fees in certain cases. So that's what this hearing is about, because how do we respect the difficulty for de minimis work? In other words, if you are just refilling a salt shaker while you are waiting tables, and it really is just a tiny amount of work, how do we make that work functioning for everybody? While at the same time making sure that employees are getting all the wages they're entitled to. So there is a compromise solution that we're now having hearings about, and today's the first day of public hearings. I'm probably going to turn it off so that it doesn't distract me, because my colleague is testifying. And I apologize right now if I'm talking fast, because I do want to get back in there. So a couple things that happened this week. One, some of you have reached out to me about the railroad, the Houstonic Railroad, did some spraying of the railroad bed, and it particularly affected North Canaan, Falls Village, and Cornwall. And so I've talked to a bunch of people who live in that area, including the selectmen from all three of those towns. And we had a meeting earlier this week with several representatives from the DOT, Department of Transportation, to take a look at exactly what happened and why we don't think it conforms to what it's supposed to happen. And they certainly didn't. None of the local officials received the kind of notice that we believe they're entitled to. So if you have any particular experience with that at your house or in your yard, please bring that to my attention or to your local selectmen, because I'm in communication with all of them. We're going to have a second meeting that will involve the railroad and the vendor so that we can get down to specifics. I also this morning attended a great event that was sponsored by the Northwest Connecticut Chamber of Commerce, at which a demographer named Ken Grundlock, I'll make sure I spell his name correctly when I do that, newsletter, talked about just basic demographics in our population, and how there are fewer members of Gen X than there are either baby boomers or millennials, and how that affects our businesses, how that affects our economy, how that affects tax collection, all kinds of things. And he's actually very optimistic, but in a kind of direct, pay attention to the basic math, people. So that was really, I really want to thank the Northwest Chamber for setting up. It was a really illuminating morning. What else? There's, again, as I've said before, October gets really busy, so there's a lot of things going on here. I've also done, several of you have asked why I haven't brought up rural connectivity and municipal gain recently, because I don't want to bore everyone with the topic all the time, but I am continually going to meetings about that, and I had another phone conversation this week with people from the Pew Charitable Trusts, which have set up a tool, which I can provide a link to in the newsletter, that allows us to take a look at how different states across the country have dealt with rural connectivity. And what we might be able to learn from that. So that was pretty interesting. I also went to a panel about prenatal screening. Took me back to the days of being pregnant, and how there is new testing now to allow to give pregnant women a better sense of what's happening in their pregnancy, and to test them for various anomalies. It's much better and much more accurate than the prior testing, as is evidenced by the fact that private insurance companies have picked it up, because it is a better, more cost-effective, and better predictor of challenges in a pregnancy. And so that presentation was geared at the essential question of whether we ought to have Medicaid pay for that test. And so I'm looking forward to looking at the data on that. It seemed like a really hopeful development in terms of both a more cost-effective and more accurate test. Excuse me. Then a couple of other events, but I'll spare you that one. So I just wanted to also update to send out just a couple of topics that I wanted to cover quickly. First of all, I just got some information about a scam targeting Eversource customers. That scammers are calling to say that you need to install a new meter for a customer to avoid being disconnected. But you have to pay $300 or something like that first. I will put more specific information in the newsletter about this, but don't fall for that. Please take a look at the particular information. That is not Eversource that is asking for that. I also had a couple of student-related things that I wanted to mention, and again, I'll put more specific information in the newsletter so that you can access it. First of all, students whose parents make $50,000 a year or less will receive free tuition at UConn beginning in the fall of 2020. So cheers to UConn for making a really important step in the direction of true diversity in their student population, economic diversity. And the other thing that I wanted to, I have talked to a number of school counselors, college counselors, and teachers recently about sometimes students don't realize the kind of financial aid that is available to them for college tuition. And so I encourage every student that is thinking about attending college in the next year or so to fill out what's called the FAFSA form. I think that's short for federal aid. Sorry, let me get you the accurate information. It is the free application for federal student aid, or FAFSA. Again, I'll provide more specific information on the website. Everybody who's thinking about this should fill it out, because you really could be entitled. College could be more affordable than you realize it is. And finally, I will provide information. The Connecticut Office of Health Strategy that I've gotten to know dealing with various issues concerning Sharon Hospital over the last several months has launched a new program called Health Score, which is a website designed to help consumers compare costs for various procedures, between costs and quality of care at various institutions. So I think it's a really important piece of additional transparency for all of us who receive health care, which is all of us. And let's see, upcoming events. First of all, it's Fall Festival weekend in Salisbury, my hometown. The scarecrows are starting to go up, so if you're driving through Salisbury, stop by and check the scarecrows out. The Houstonic Youth Services Bureau has a run on Saturday morning, so if you're interested in taking a run in beautiful Salisbury, join me, because I'll be out there. And let's see, Women's Support Services, another agency that I have been involved with for many years and have very strong feelings about the fabulous work that they do. Their Vigil, Domestic Violence Vigil, is on October 17th in Kent at 6 p.m. October is Domestic Violence Awareness Month, and so that is always a very moving and powerful event, and if you can join us, we'd love to have you there. And again, a reminder about the prescription drug cost event that I have organized in North Canaan at the town hall at 9:30 in the morning, unfortunately, on October 22nd. And again, if that's not a convenient time for you, please reach out to me, and I'll see. First of all, if you have questions that you want to make sure get asked, let me know, and I will also see if I can organize another one at another time that's convenient for more people. And it's a long weekend coming up, so I hope you're getting a long weekend, and I hope we get a little sunshine to highlight the beautiful, beautiful, beautiful fall foliage. And see you soon. Bye.